There's different ways food and beverage manufacturers can say their product is sugar-free while at the same time including ingredients that act just like sugar in the body. And in this video, I'll show you how these loopholes work and most importantly, how to not fall for them. Hi, I'm Stefano, founder of Transparency Foods. I have developed 3 monk fruit sweetener products trusted by over 100,000 people, and I say this so that you know that I talk from a place of experience, which I think is important. According to the FDA, for a product to be sugar-free, it must have less than 0.5 grams of sugar per serving. Now, the question here is, what does sugar actually mean? Well, the FDA defines sugars as the sum of all free monosaccharides and disaccharides, which includes these right here. I made a whole video explaining those in detail, and I'll link to it below. However, all you need to know now is that those are the only ones that qualify as sugars in the eyes of the FDA, and this can be a problem. I mean, the reason we avoid sugar is because it raises our blood sugar levels, which leads to a whole set of issues, including diabetes, cardiovascular disease, weight gain, and many other things. So if I tell you that a product is sugar-free, then I think it would be fair for you to assume that it's free of sugar and anything else that acts just like it, right? In other words, if I sell you a product that's sugar-free, but instead of adding sugar, I add an equal amount of maltodextrin, which is arguably worse than sugar, wouldn't you feel cheated? I mean, I certainly would. This is exactly what's happening today in the US market. There's more complex carbohydrates that don't fall into the sugar definition of the FDA that act just like sugar in the body, and they are being added to replace sugar in sugar-free products. The most commonly used are maltodextrin, which is a starch, and maltitol, which is a sugar alcohol. For example, these sugar-free candies by Jelly Belly contain maltitol syrup as their main ingredient. Maltitol has a glycemic index of 35, which is more than half of the glycemic index of sugar. It's admittedly not as bad as sugar, but it's definitely going to raise your blood glucose level. In fact, I used a continuous glucose monitor to track their impact, and check this out. This is how much they raised my blood glucose levels. And that's not the only example. I mean, there's a bunch of examples in the market today. These are all sugar-free products with maltitol that will raise your blood sugar levels if you were to eat them. Now, let's take a look at another example, Metamucil. They have been around since 1934, and their products are being used by millions of people all across the US. Their sugar-free product includes maltodextrin, which is a highly glycemic starch that raises blood sugar levels more than pure table sugar itself. Maltodextrin is listed as a second ingredient. And as you probably know, we as food manufacturers need to list ingredients in order of quantity, from highest to lowest. That means that it's the second most abundant ingredient in this formula. Now, I don't know exactly, but by looking at the label, I would estimate maltodextrin to make up between 20 to 30% of the product. Now, everything they're doing is perfectly legal. I mean, they're a huge company. Maltodextrin is not defined as a sugar by the FDA, and whenever they say the product is sugar-free, which they do a lot, they also say that the product is not a low-calorie food, which is exactly what the FDA requires. But come on, I mean, isn't this a bit misleading? If you think about it, like how many diabetics out there consume sugar-free Metamucil thinking it doesn't spike their blood glucose levels? Now, to be fair, I tested the impact in my glucose levels using, again, a continuous glucose monitor, and it wasn't as big as I thought it would be. And this is probably because the serving size is fairly small and the fiber itself helps mitigate the glucose spike. But there was a spike nonetheless. And in case you're wondering, and I find this very interesting, Metamucil adds maltodextrin not because of its sweetness. They add maltodextrin because it makes it easier to dissolve the powder in water, and that's the cheapest way to do it. Now, think about that for a second. They concluded that they could sell more by making it a bit easier for the customer to dissolve the powder than to truly make it neutral for our blood glucose levels. And guess what? They were probably right. I mean, they have been around for 90 years, and I wasn't around back then, but I don't think that people were exactly geeking out about blood glucose levels in the middle of World War II, right? But times have changed, and now this info is becoming increasingly more available. And I personally think consumer preferences will continue to change in favor of healthier products. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, if you do care about this stuff, make sure you take a look at the ingredients the next time you buy a sugar-free product. And that's it for this video. If you found this helpful, please like the video and subscribe below. It only takes a second and it helps me a lot in growing the channel. And the more we grow, the more resources I can put into these videos in the future. So that's my ask for today. Thank you, and until next time.